Welcome to WhiskyCast, cask strength conversation featuring news and interviews from the world of whiskey. I'm Mark Gillespie, and this is episode number 1152 for March 8th, 2026. Coming up in a few minutes.
We try to make it very sort of sweet and approachable, but having richness, like vanilla richness and depth. And until we had the smoke, like a little bit of smoke, a little bit of Kalila in there, the whiskey was good, but it wasn't Johnnie Walker, it wasn't shining and singing. So we had a little bit of Kalila in there that also been matured in ex-bourbon casks, and the whole whiskey just came to life.
I know it's going to seem like we planned this for International Women's Day, but we have two whiskey makers on the show this week who just happen to be women. Dr. Emma Walker, the master blender for Johnnie Walker, and Angela D'Orazio, the creative director of whiskeymaking for Compass Box. Both women unveiled new whiskeys this week, and we'll hear from them later on WhiskyCast In-Depth. I'll taste their new whiskeys in the What I'm Tasting This Week department, and we'll say goodbye to an old friend on Behind the Label. The news is next on this week's WhiskyCast, whiskey's longest-running and most awarded podcast series.
Hey, it's Gabriel from Dewar's Whiskey. Here's a quick tip. Whenever you're pouring great whiskey, especially something like Dewar's 12-year, don't overthink it. All you need is a few glasses and a couple of people worth sharing it with. The rest takes care of itself. Back in a bit.
Let's get started with the week's news. Sazerac appears to be ready to expand in Kentucky. According to the Lexington Herald-Leader, the privately held company purchased the bad loans for the insolvent Garrett County Distilling Company, totaling $27 million. Garrett County's founders defaulted on the loans from Truist Bank, leaving behind a brand-new distillery near Lexington. Sazerac confirmed the purchase of the bad loans, but declined to be more specific about its plans for the distillery. This week marked 1 year since most Canadian provinces pulled American whiskeys off of their shelves to protest American trade tariffs, and the boycott shows no signs of ending soon. That boycott hurt Brown-Forman's global sales and profits for the first 9 months of the company's fiscal year. The company reported this week a 2% decline in net sales and a 1% decline in gross profits. Brown-Forman's developed international markets, which includes Canada, were down by 2%, led by a 60% decline in Canadian sales. U.S. sales were down 8% on lower tequila sales. Net sales for the whiskey portfolio were up 2%. Brown-Forman shares hit a 52-week low in New York trading following the report. Campari executives are cautiously positive about 2026 after reporting 2025 sales up 2.4%. The company is exposed to the U.S. market in multiple ways. Its liqueurs and Glen Grant Scotch whiskey face U.S. trade tariffs, while its Wild Turkey bourbon is being boycotted in Canada. The company expects the impact of global trade tariffs and a weaker U.S. dollar will be a drag on performance this year. Edrington is doubling down on the luxury market, with plans to open a new boutique shop for the Macallan in London's iconic Harrods department store. The boutique will open this summer and will have one of the largest selections of rare Macallans outside of the Macallan estate in Speyside. The Macallan just released its 5th edition in the Distill Your World series with Distill Your World Paris. It retails for $4,750 a bottle. Minnesota's Keeper's Heart Whiskey has just released its first whiskey made from its own distillate. Keeper's Heart American Pot Still Whiskey is an homage to the whiskey's master distiller Brian Nation made at Middleton Distillery in Ireland. This is really the whiskey you were brought over here to create, wasn't it?
Exactly, Mark. It's been a really exciting journey, and we're actually thrilled to be at the point now where we can share it with people. Really excited.
Tell me about the whiskey itself. What went into making it?
So essentially, it's a mash bill of malted barley and unmalted barley. It's a 50-50 mash bill, 50% malt, 50% unmalted barley. It's distilled 3 times in our copper pot stills at Minneapolis, at our distillery in Minneapolis, and then it's matured in virgin American oak barrels for 4 years, and it has resulted in a really luscious, rich, spicy whiskey that has all of the characteristics of what you'd expect in a pot still, and then has the fantastic addition of that virgin American oak contribution to bring a lovely level of sweetness to it as well.
How did it mature over time? You mentioned earlier that the first 2 years were kind of tenuous.
They definitely were, and I mean, I suppose being from Ireland and dealing and watching whiskies mature and refill American barrels, the expectation for me is that there would have been more of a kind of a consistent wood contribution over the period of time. But for the first 2 years in the virgin American oak barrel, it was almost like a wood bomb. The influence of the wood really came to life in the first 2 years, and it was only really at kind of 2.25 years that the distillate began to shine through again. And that was great, because that's what we were looking for, was that actual influence of distillate character to really begin to balance the influence of the wood. So as we watched it mature from year 2 onwards, it got a little bit less nerve-wracking to see that the distillate was able to come back out, and we're absolutely thrilled with, after 4 years, to see that balance in the whiskey and seeing the richness coupled with the pot still spice.
Now, you didn't use any oats in this one. I know your colleagues in Ireland are pushing to use more oats in a single pot still recipe.
Yeah, so we didn't. We went with what I would call the traditional mash bill of the malted and non-malted barley. And yeah, I mean, I know that there's a lot of people in Ireland are actually using additional oats in their pot still mash bill. I think the law at the moment is 5%, but they're looking to move it to 30%, and it's going to be a nice addition to the pot still. But I stuck with the traditional malted and non-malted barley, and essentially, who knows, down the road we might do some little experiments using some oats, because definitely oats can create a lovely flavour to whiskey.
What do you think the reaction is going to be to this American pot still whiskey when you take it to Ireland?
It'll be exciting, because I'm actually hoping to bring some of it with me to the Cork Whisky Fest at the end of the month in March, just to bring some samples over for people to taste and see what it's like. I've brought some maturing samples to festivals over there over the last couple of years. It's been maturing, and people were blown away by the actual impact and the actual complexity and the actual taste. So I'm looking forward for them to taste the final product, and I'll let you know how it goes.
Keeper's Heart American Pot Still Whiskey will retail for $49.99 a bottle, and there are plans to release a triple distilled rye next year and a triple distilled bourbon 2 years from now. I'll have my tasting notes for the American Pot Still Whiskey in a few minutes. The Campbellton Malts Festival is still a couple of months away, but Glen Scotia Distillery has already unveiled its festival bottling. The medium peated single malt was matured for 7 years in first-fill bourbon barrels before spending 6 months in ruby port casks. It's bottled at 53.9% ABV and carries a price tag of £59 a bottle at specialist retailers globally and online. Heaven Hill is busy. On the heels of last week's new releases comes word of this year's Heritage Collection release, featuring some of the oldest whiskeys in the Heaven Hill inventory. The 2026 release is a 22-year-old bourbon distilled in 2003 and will be available in limited amounts both in the U.S. and internationally, with a recommended retail price of $319.99 a bottle. I'll have my tasting notes for it later on. Jack Daniel's has released its annual limited edition McLaren Racing bottle with an increase in bottling strength for the whiskey to 43% from the standard 40% ABV. It'll be available this month in F1 global markets and other select locations in both 700 ml and 1 liter sizes, with a recommended retail price of $34.99 for the 1 liter bottle. Meanwhile, sister brand Woodford Reserve has unveiled its annual Kentucky Derby bottle. This year's bottle features artwork by Chicago artist Anna Murphy. The distillery will host a bottle signing party April 11th. Ireland's Teeling Whiskey Company has released the 4th edition in its Wonders of Wood series of single pot still whiskies. The whiskey is finished in Carpathian oak barrels and is available at the distillery and select Irish retailers now, with a wider international release later this year. Scotland's Aberargie distillery laid down its first spirit in 2017 and is now releasing its first single malt. The distillery near Perth used a mix of ex-bourbon and sherry casks for the whiskey, which is available now at UK retailers for £69.95 a bottle. Kentucky's New Riff Distilling has released its annual Silver Grove Bourbon and Rye whiskies to benefit the Silver Grove Community Foundation. The 6-year-old whiskies are the oldest Silver Grove whiskies to date and will go on sale this coming Friday at the distillery in Newport, Kentucky for $59.99 each. And finally, Maker's Mark has released the third edition in its wood finishing collection's Unsung Heroes series. The Steward's release honors the distillery staff and will be available in limited quantities. No word on pricing. You can keep up on the latest whiskey news all week long at whiskycast.com and in the WhiskyCast community app. Let's check the calendar now and see what's happening around the world of whiskey. The Whisky Exchange has an Irish Spirits barrel top tasting this Thursday night at its London Bridge shop in London. The Drinkmonger Spirits Fair is this coming weekend in Edinburgh, Scotland. Bourbon's Bistro in Louisville has a Jefferson's Reserve tasting on the 18th and a Bardstown Bourbon Company dinner on the 25th. Whiskey Live London is March 27th and 28th, and the Cork Whiskey Fest is the 27th through the 29th in Cork, Ireland. If you're hosting a whiskey event, let us know about it. We'll be glad to add it to the calendars at whiskycast.com and in the WhiskyCast community app.
Throughout the years, Dewar's has created some incredible whiskeys, but our new Dewar's 12-year-old, that one's a personal favorite. It's the kind of scotch that earns praise from the pros, but still feels right at home in the middle of a good night with friends. Every pour opens up with notes of vanilla, toffee, baking spice, and a smooth oak finish. It's rich, it's approachable, and it has a way of bringing people together. Whether it's around the table, the fireplace, or just wherever the night happens to take you. Look, the glasses may hold the whiskey, but the whiskey, that's what holds the moment. Please enjoy responsibly. Copyright 2025, Dewar's is a trademark. Imported by John Dewar & Sons Company, Coral Gables, Florida. Blended Scotch whiskey, 40% alcohol by volume.
A quick program note, join us next Monday for a special edition of WhiskyCast Live for St. Patrick's Day. My special guest will be Glendalough Master Distiller Rowdy Rooney, and we'll talk about all things Irish whiskey related for St. Patrick's Day the next day. That's Monday, March 16th at 5 p.m. Eastern U.S. Time, 2100 GMT on the WhiskyCast YouTube channel, our Facebook page, and in the WhiskyCast community app. WhiskyCast In-Depth is brought to you by Glendalough Irish Whiskey. We're going to feature 2 interviews this week with a couple of the leading blenders in the whiskey world. In a few minutes, I'll talk with Emma Walker of Johnnie Walker about her new Black Cask edition. But first, Compass Box Creative Director of Whiskymaking Angela D'Orazio has released her first whiskey since joining Compass Box last fall, the annual edition of Hedonism Blended Grain Scotch Whiskey. This year's edition features artwork by Australian artist Emma Hack, who worked her magic on actor and director Karen Gillan as the muse for the Hedonism label. We talked this week on a Zoom call. So the last time we talked, you had just settled in at Compass Box. Are you getting used to things now?
Yeah, as much as everything goes really fast here. A lot of things are happening. So there's a lot of new things all the time. That's what I wanted to say. But yes, I am. I'm starting to feel like I'm getting to know a bit more of all the whiskeys. I mean, the vast library here is mind-boggling to try to grasp a bit. And all the processes are much more complicated than they used to be at my old job. So, yeah, it has taken a while, but now, I'm feeling a bit more at home in that sense.
How are they more complicated?
Well, when I was blending my old job, I only had to take out the inventory and decide which casks to take, and then I I did a little list, and they sent it down to the mine, and then a couple of days later, I got them in my office, all the samples. Whilst here is 6 to 8 weeks of a waiting time, first of all, but then also you have to send various requests to various peoples, and there's let's say the blending log is much more complicated, and there's so many more factors to calculate in than what we did at Mackmyra. We invented the whole thing ourselves, whilst here it's more like Scotch whiskey, calculating the liters of alcohol rather than how much whiskey you have in the cask, etc. So if that explains it.
And that explains it. Was it difficult to create a blended grain whiskey for the first time with hedonism?
It took a while to get into the subtleties of grain. I must admit that. I've never blended grain before, so I had to really do a lot of comparisons and a lot of tastings and bring them home and get more closely acquainted with them. So it was a little challenge, but at a certain point, you realize, or I realized that, okay, we're now getting friends. We're now becoming like, I sense the differences in a more subtle way than I did when I started. It was a bit more like, gosh, they are so small, the differences. So it has been an interesting journey to, and I'm still on that for the grain whiskey to really go into each cask and sort of communicate with it.
How does this year's hedonism differ from previous years?
So this one has a bit more fruit, a bit more of other colors than the American oak cask, which has traditionally been around for grain whiskies and for hedonism. So this year had these beautiful recharred sherry casks, and they were just fantastic, like 24-year-old, 30% of the blend, giving the whiskey a new sort of complexity and fruitiness that a grain whiskey perhaps doesn't have usually.
You also included some old Strathclyde distillery.
Yes, some 30-year-old refill bourbon barrels that were amazing, really, really amazing, fudgy, floral, beautiful 30-year-old.
Have you discovered that you like grain whiskey now?
I actually have, yes, and it's like going into subtleties, and then you realize, oh wow, this is so enjoyable, and it's like you're tuning down. You're not tuning up the volume, so it's the opposite of the peaty whiskey.
What was it like working with Karen Gillen and Emma Hack on this project?
So I didn't meet Emma, so she did some work on Karen when I wasn't there. But Karen I met, and she was very sort of approachable personality, very easy to talk to. Like she could have been any Scottish person on the street, except being stunning and 2 meter tall and looking like Wonder Woman in the Scottish shape. she was really great, and the fact that she wanted to do this project with us was just amazing, and she, yeah. So we tried whiskeys, and we sampled some stuff, and she was just in the moment, and very simple. Simple is maybe the wrong word, but sort of easy to like.
How's her nose?
I think she's pretty good. I didn't train her that much. I think she's like she distinguishes a good amount of things. Maybe she can come back for some more training. I don't know.
This was your first whiskey since joining Compass Box. What do you think of it?
I'm super happy with it. I'm actually even more happy with it than what I thought when it was blended. I think it has. Is there a dog there? I see in the picture.
Yes, there's a dog there.
Okay, so sorry about that. I always get distracted by dogs, by animal. Yes, so I think it when it got married, it got even better. And I also like the fact that we had to change some casks because we found some casks that we didn't like when we were doing editing the what we thought was the final version. So we then got in some other casks, which was it turned out to be they were not available because they were in a warehouse that had beehives, so which belonged to Diageo. And Diageo had closed that warehouse for the rest of the summer. So they said, no, you cannot take these casks. These are not available. So we managed to dig out other stuff that we had, and then we did the last trial, and it was really good, and we were happy with it. And it was like, I think it was one extra month because of all these cask changes. And then it's always sort of a bit nervous to do a blend and then wait for the outcome to see does it match? Is it that really that good as it was?
What's next?
Yeah. So you know what I usually say: if I tell you, I have to kill you. So, Mark, I would like you to be alive.
Okay.
Well, I'm working on a few bespoke, and I'm working on some future fun projects that we're going to do, and I'm working on some innovation and development ideas together with my team, and yeah, so that's what that's what I can say right now.
How are you getting used to the rest of the portfolio?
We're getting acquainted. I'm being thrown out at various festivals and stuff like that. So I put myself through the filter of learning the old versions before I go. So I kind of own them. So that's good. I meet people and I get to talk about them. I get to talk about the old hedonisms. I get to talk about, all the old limited editions and how the core range was being developed, and how, old extinct versions were made, and then they were made redundant, and how we have come to the conclusions that we have today, like, for example, Orchard House, how that was developed from a whiskey that we sort of realized was coming from rinsed casks instead of the unrinsed, and so on. So I'm learning bit by bit. It's a huge portfolio, so I'm not claiming that I own more than, I don't know, a little bit of it, but I'm heading towards learning more.
Are you going to put your stamp on any of those current releases?
Yes, absolutely.
So we'll see some changes over time in Orchard House? And...
Oh, you mean of those?
Yeah.
Not for now. No, I thought you meant like coming releases. No,
right.
No, not for now. For now, they are being what they are. Of course, there's always a bit of change when you work with Scotch whiskey. Even if you own nearly 50,000 casks, you want to stay true to, let's say, Orchard House. You want to stay true to the fruitiness and the waxiness. And when you don't have young enough or old enough Kleinlich, you have to tweak it a little. So then you have, you might go to new producers, or you tweak it a bit. So that is always going to happen, and it's very interesting to be a part of that development. That's so. They're staying like they are, but, small tweaks along the way.
What have you learned since you took the job?
Definitely grain whiskey, I would say. What else? I've become a bit better on calculating, the worth of whiskies. That was really not in my field before at Mackmyra. So now when we're, I'm doing a project, I need to calculate what the worth of the whiskies are. And I need to play with that up and down whilst I'm developing a recipe. So since that was never in my world before, it's really interesting to have that tool now as well.
I'll have my tasting notes for the new Compass Box Hedonism release in a few minutes. Turning now to Johnnie Walker, which introduced its first new permanent expression in 15 years this week. Black Cask is designed to be a lighter, sweeter blend than the smoky and spicy Black Label. It was created by the Johnnie Walker blending team led by master blender Dr. Emma Walker, who has been blending whiskeys for more than 20 years. We sat down to talk after a Black Cask tasting this week in New York City. So what went into the creation of Black Cask? Take me from the beginning of the marketing brief or whatever that started it.
So we expanded the world of Johnnie Walker Black Label a good few years ago now with the introduction of Double Black. So that's why we wanted to sort of look at the flavours, the styles, the character, the textures we have in Johnnie Walker Black Label, and explore just a part of that whole balanced world. So with Double Black, we looked at the sort of smokier, spicier, and probably a little bit sweeter than Black Label, and brought that to life. So we were tasked with looking at how do we make the sweetest, smoothest Johnnie Walker Black. And we wanted to really think about how we make Black Label. So a big part of what we do when we're creating Johnnie Walker Black Label is we use whiskies that have been matured in American oak that's been used in the bourbon industry. So the bourbon is essentially seasoned, that toasted, that charred cask, and brought some different characteristics, some different congeners to the surface. So when we put our new mixed spirit into it, we get this beautiful, smooth, sweet caramel flavours, there's hints of coconut that comes through, and it's got such a lovely, soft, smooth texture on the palate. It's just an amazing combination of different aspects of the whisky making world. So when we were tasked with looking at Black Casks, that's what we thought. We wanted to look at whiskies that have been matured exclusively in ex-bourbon casks. And when we started thinking about that, that was really almost an inspiration point in itself, because you started thinking about the great whisky making traditions that you see around the world. So thinking about American and Scottish whisky, how they're similar but how they're very different as well. So try to think about how you make something that is tying together the similarities. So taking that world that we know with the maturation style, but thinking about the distillery styles that we have in Scotland. So we knew that Cameron Bridge was going to be at the heart of this whisky. So this is our biggest distillery based in Fife. And we use column stills for creating the new make spirit there. So we get a lovely clean whiskey. We can use wheat in that production process. So again, similarities with American whiskey making. We get a lovely, beautiful apple note. So that started us thinking about sweetness, like sweet fruit flavours, so like orchard fruit. So that took us down the road of like Glenelgan has those beautiful apple notes. Rose Isle is becoming an icon for us now in the world of Johnnie Walker. It has a lovely fruitiness. It works so well with so many different cask styles. So they were going to be at the heart of it, including other whiskies as well. And we tried making this whiskey, and we're trying to make it very sort of sweet and approachable, but having richness, like vanilla richness and depth. And until we had the smoke, like a little bit of smoke, a little bit of Caol Ila in there, the whiskey was good, but it wasn't Johnnie Walker. It wasn't shining and singing. So we had a little bit of Caol Ila in there that also been matured in ex-bourbon casks, and the whole whiskey just came to life. It's like it became its own presence, its own thing. So that little bit of smoke in there, just is almost like seasoning, brings all these different characteristics, that sweet smoothness. It made the whiskey almost taste like toasted marshmallows, which was a revelation to me. I don't think we've ever created that flavour in a whiskey before. So it was amazing having that sort of almost that short brief. Took us on an exploration of a world that we sort of knew, but gave us a new viewpoint and helped us to learn more, to understand more about the whiskies that we know so well.
Is this the first time you've built a whiskey around a grain whiskey?
No, and a lot of times we think about the grain whiskey like Cameron Bridge, North British Pot and Das has been at the heart of our whiskey making. So grain whiskey in Scotland has got a massive heritage as well. So Cameron Bridge is over 200 years old and has been at the forefront of innovation and whiskey making, and has been the sort of powerhouse of Johnnie Walker whiskey. So I think for me, that style of whiskey is always, unless we're talking about Johnnie Walker Green Label, of course, because that's a blended malt, it's sort of always at the heart of what we're doing. But really being able to talk about that almost more purposefully because of those similarities with American whiskey, when we really wanted to think about what are the similarities and what are the differences in black casks that really bring those two worlds together, but also differentiates as well. That it just sort of made sense that really be truly at the heart of what we're doing with this whiskey.
It really is a Scotch whiskey for bourbon lovers, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's what we were almost tasked with, is how do we make... So Scotch whiskey can sometimes be seen as being a bit challenging, a little bit divisive. I think sometimes we get that impression almost through what we see. You know, when you see it in films or you see people talking about it, and they often talk about the big smoky, the powerful whiskies. You know, you think we're talking about Lagavulin, Caol Ila, and they think that's not for them, or they might have tried Scotch whiskey, but it's not been the right time for them to try it. It's not been something that sort of chimed with them. So we really wanted to concentrate on making a whiskey that was really approachable, but that wasn't dumbed down. We're not trying to make a Scotch whiskey that is bourbon, and we wouldn't want to do that because it would take away from what Johnnie Walker is. We wanted to take a whiskey that was truly Scotch whiskey, that had all the defined moments that you think of in Johnnie Walker, but that really spoke to that sweeter, approachable palate, the things that people see as being core parts of the bourbon whiskey that they know and enjoy. So how do we almost lace those two together, bring those two closer together, and create something that is almost unexpected for Johnnie Walker and for Scotch whiskey? So something that's really exciting and innovative, but is still Johnnie Walker at the core. I think that's what led to it, is how do we make something that bourbon drinkers will enjoy, but that's still really Scottish and is Johnnie Walker.
Where does this fit into the family?
So in the family, you have, obviously, Johnnie Walker Black Label is at the heart of everything that we do, and it has been since, 1909 with Old Highland. One of the things that I actually love about that is it became Black Label because of the customers, that they would start asking for the black one because it had the black label as it stood on the back bar. And I love that there's almost this to and fro, there's this coming together of the whiskey makers and the whiskey drinkers to create something that's so iconic. So you have that's balanced. That is balanced around the flavour wheel that we have in Scotch whisky. So, you know, with that smoke, the rich fruit, the dried fruit from sort of ex-sherry cask or European oak maturation. You've got the sweet caramel flavours from ex-bourbon cask maturation. We've got spice, you've got freshness, you've got ripe fruit in there. It is just a beautifully balanced whisky that encompasses all of that. With Black Label, that was the spicy and the spicy and a smoky one. So we really wanted to sort of dial up the smoke to 11, which may be a reference that some of your younger listeners don't get, but hopefully we'll get. So we wanted that to be almost a bit spicy, a bit smoky, a bit belligerent. So it still harks back to its big brother, Johnnie Walker Black Label. But it's a bit feisty. So when we were tasting it before, for me, double black is almost like milk chocolate. It's got sweetness and coconut in there because we're dialing up those charred casks. And Black Label is a little bit more like a sort of dark chocolate, a rich chocolate. And with Black Cask, we're really looking at a sweeter, smoother side. So we're saying it's almost like a creme caramel, a creme brulee, apple pie and custard. We're sort of looking at a lovely sweet softness. And because of the American oak maturation, you've got that beautiful softness and smoothness on the palate. So again, you've got that lineage back, and with that delicate smoke rather than a predominant smoke, you still have that sort of DNA of Johnnie Walker, but we're just exploring the sort of sweeter, smoother side of it as well.
I want to get you to tell me about the Ruby cask, because even though that's not available in the U.S., it is available to our listeners around the world. Tell me about that one.
Yeah, so it's one that your listeners might see in Global Travel as well. I mean, it's a lovely whiskey, and that's where we talk about the sort of sweeter, fruitier side of Johnnie Walker Black Label. So we're really, again, thinking about maturation. So we're using some ex-bourbon cask in there. We're also using some rejuvenated casks, so casks that have been recharred. We get a lovely spice and cloves really dialed up. We've also got casks that have been seasoned with PX Oloroso. So it's a special PX Oloroso blend that's created for us. So it really brings some of that richness and sort of sherry-style flavours coming through. With that casks, with that whiskey, because we were thinking about almost red fruit. You know, if you think about fall, you think about autumn, you think about the purples and the dark reds. That's almost what we had in mind when we were thinking about that. Whereas I would say Black Cask is almost a bit more like the sort of late spring, early summer. You're thinking about the warmth and the sunshine and the greenness. So with this, Rose Isle was truly at the heart of this. And we had the fruity spirit style that we get from there matured in ex-wine casks, so ex-red wine casks. So they've been lovely toasted charred casks and really sort of dialed up. So where you might have had red apples or green apples, it dialed up to red apples, more like your Braeburns, and some lovely plum notes and that coming through. So it really sort of explores that more rich fruit that we get, but also some of that sort of sweeter, but almost a more dense. You know, if you think about sort of jam or jelly, I think you might be calling it over in the US. So really think about those types of flavours and textures. So again, you can see we've sort of got all parts of that Johnnie Walker Black world covered with different parts, different whiskies in our portfolio.
Have you settled on a house style for Rose Isle yet? Because it was designed to create all sorts of different whiskies.
No, but that's part of the fun, is we don't have a house style. It's really a distillery that's been created for our blenders. So we can get that, we can play with that, we can tweak it with whatever we're needing to have in our inventory. So through special releases, through the whiskies that we've created with Johnnie Walker, we've really shown that sort of fruity side. I think you've got some of the nuttiness comes through as well. We've got some of the green grassy flavours. We're actually working on exploring the sort of the heavier, more complex flavours you can get from that whiskey as well. Now, I think that's what we'll continue to do. We'll work with it in different ways. And each of those will almost be a house style. So it's not going to be one house. It's going to be a community of flavours that we get from Rose Isle.
Last time you were on the show, we were talking about the Johnnie Walker vaults in the Johnnie Walker experience. How has it been working with those ghost whiskies and those old and rare parcels?
Oh, I mean, it's been such an amazing honour to get to work and look at the Johnnie Walker vault. So the vault is under the Johnnie Walker experience. It used to be an old bank vault back in the day, so it used to hold amazing artwork, jewellery, gold, money, and now it holds our gold. It holds 500 of our best, rarest, most expressionful whiskies. So we've got ghost whiskies in there like Brora, Port Ellen, some lovely Caledonian whiskies. So that's one of our grain distilleries that used to be situated in Edinburgh. So when you actually stand at the doors of Johnnie Walker Experience, you can see the old chimney of that distillery. So it's a core part of where we are. So getting to work with those whiskies, but also getting to work with some of our more experimental whiskies as well. So the chocolate malt whiskey that we produced at T&N is a core part of the vault experience as well. We've got Rose Isle matured in different cask styles, different flavour styles, as we talked about. We had some Cardew in there that had been matured in ex-rum casks. So we've got lots of different things in there that really show the breadth and skill of the craftspeople that we work with across our distilleries, our cooperage, our maturation warehouses, bringing that to life. We also have whiskies in there that we blended previously. So whiskies that we worked on with Jim Beveridge, with Maureen Robinson, Caroline Martin, that was blended and put back into cask. So being able to use those whiskies that have matured while we've been maturing and seeing how they've changed and developed, what's happened with them, and being able to use those and bring those into the heart of our blends has been absolutely phenomenal. It's such fun to almost... We talk about leaning back, like standing on the shoulders of giants and leaning back on our heritage, and we're actually doing that in a glass here. But yeah, it's been a wonderful year, getting to tell people's stories into a whiskey, creating their story in a glass has been such an honour. So getting to do that with Olivier... Sorry, I've just gone completely blank. I'll just say Olivier. Getting to do that with Olivier and creating the wonderful, our couture expressions. So that was just 25 bottles of each whiskey was phenomenal. Especially getting to play with Port Ellen in different ways and seeing how you can make it talk of spring, summer, fall, winter by using different volumes of that, different amounts, and making it play tunes was absolutely amazing. We actually did the launch for that here in New York. We did the couture blend as well, where we worked with Harrods as well for the launch of that. And yeah, we're still working on some exciting projects coming forward in that world, so it's really exciting. As I say, getting to tie that full circle back to John Walker in the shop in Kilmarnock when he would blend directly for customers in front of him. That's essentially what we're doing, but telling people stories, their own heritage and history, making it part of Johnnie Walker, because their recipes, their blend will then become part of our archive as well going forward.
When we were talking during lunch, you mentioned something that sort of took me by surprise, that every batch of Johnnie Walker Black Label is different, because every blender that I've ever talked to says, oh, we haven't changed the recipe, it's the same as we made it 50 years ago. And that's not really the case, is it?
So the recipe per se is the same, but the recipe isn't sort of set in stone. So we don't make a batch that has 10 casks of Kalila and 8 casks of Teaninnick and 3 casks of Glenlossie. What we have are essentially guidelines. We know how to mix the different distilleries together and different maturation together in different ways to create the same whiskey. So they'll always be within, it will be the same whiskey, but we can do it in slightly different ways. Because if you go back 12 years, Teaninnick might have been closed because we were getting a new mash filter in, or another distillery might be getting the boiler refitted. So we have to be able to flex and make exactly the same whiskey, but using different combinations. It's not as simple as saying we don't have Teaninnick, so we're going to use more Glenlossie. You might say we don't have Teaninnick at this point because of 12 years ago, so we're going to use Glenlossie combined with Linkwood, but we're going to decrease a little bit of the ex-sherry cask in there, and we're going to use a little bit more of the sort of rejuvenated with refill cask. So it's about knowing how all these things interact. It's not as simple as changing one line. It's about keeping that balance across the whole sort of recipe grid, sort of imbalance, and then make it coherent. So I like to joke that when you sort of have it in the table, a good old Excel sheet, and you're making up the recipe, and you do conditional formatting, you almost make it like a heat map. It looks like a sort of contour map of the whiskey, which will be subtly different each and every time, but when you look at it from the side, it always says Johnnie Walker Black Label.
Thanks to Dr. Emma Walker of Johnnie Walker and Angela D'Orazio of Compass Box for spending some time with us this week on WhiskyCast In-Depth. It's brought to you by Glendalough Irish Whiskey.
Our story begins in the wilds of County Wicklow, the Garden of Ireland, a place where nature moves slowly and meaningfully. Some whiskies blend in. Glendalough Double Barrel stands apart. I'm Rowdy Rooney, head distiller here at Glendalough, and I personally oversee our whisky making process from start to finish. We do things slowly, and we do them right. We start with a smooth, single-grain Irish whisky. We age it in flame-charred American oak for soft vanilla and a honeyed depth. Then we finish it in Oloroso casks from a small bodega in Spain. Casks we season and ship ourselves to make sure the wood is still alive with character when it arrives. That kind of care gives Glendalough Double Barrel its rich layers of dried fruit, warm spice and signature smoothness. This is a whisky at its own pace, and it's worth every second. This is Glendalough Double Barrel, crafted to stand apart.
Let's start off the What I'm Tasting This Week department with the new Johnnie Walker Black Cask. It's bottled at 43% ABV, and the nose has touches of vanilla, honey, dried flowers, coconut, and subtle fruits. The taste is sweet with a subtle spiciness, vanilla, honey, toasted marshmallows, and creme brulee. The finish is long with a kiss of smoke. It's excellent, and I'm scoring the Johnnie Walker Black Cask a 94. Now let's look at Angela D'Orazio's Compass Box Hedonism 2026 edition. This one is bottled at 46% ABV, and the nose has touches of Christmas cake, dates, and toffee. The taste has notes of almond oil, coffee, toffee, cocoa, raisins, and a touch of white pepper. The finish is long and creamy with a hint of spice, and I'm scoring the Compass Box Hedonism a 93. Moving on, the Keeper's Heart American Pot Still Whiskey that we heard about during the news is bottled at 45% ABV. The nose has a nice cereal character with dried fruits, honey, vanilla, caramel, and soft spices. The taste is chewy and thick with pot still spice notes of clove, cinnamon, and allspice, along with tree fruits and caramel. The finish is long with subtle spices and a touch of barley sugar. I'm scoring the Keeper's Heart American Pot Still Whiskey a 93. And finally, let's look at the Heaven Hill Heritage Collection 2026 edition. As I mentioned during the news, it's a 22-year-old bourbon bottled at cask strength, 64.6% ABV. The nose is full of baking spices, caramel, oak, and toasted vanilla. The taste has notes of cinnamon, leather, dried fruits, toasted vanilla, and honey. The finish is long with touches of charred oak, black pepper, and toffee. I'm scoring the Heaven Hill Heritage Collection 2026 edition a 93. I'll be adding these whiskeys to our searchable list of more than 3,900 different whiskeys from around the world. Check it out this week at WhiskyCast.com. Let's open up the WhiskyCast community app now and see what people are talking about this week. Heard from me and Bruce in Australia. Mark just finished listening to your interview on Not Another Whiskey podcast. Absolutely brilliant to be able to listen to you on the other side of the mic. As for Callington Mill, I've only had a few samples, but I can attest that they have all been very nice. We discussed Callington Mill on the Not Another Whiskey podcast. It's one of those distilleries that I've been itching to try. Bareface Whiskey in Canada has come out with a new whiskey targeting bourbon lovers, and Canuck Sloth tipped us off to a story out of Vancouver about Bareface Bear Bun, which made its debut in British Columbia this week. He writes, an interesting new entry into Canadian bourbon. While there are a decent amount of options, most of them hit the higher price market, above $70 to $100 range. Bareface is coming in at $44 Canadian. Their flagship product is already pushed as a bourbon alternative, so this is just one step further. I'm also curious if this is the start of more of the bigger Canadian brands jumping in. Full marks for the marketing name, too. Thanks for sharing that with us. And after I sat down with Emma Walker the other day, I made my evening dram that night a bottle kill of a vintage Johnnie Walker Blue Label, and as usual posted a photo in the app. Whiskey Dev writes from Malaysia in response, in my humble opinion, the Johnnie Walker Blue has sadly changed significantly in style over the last decade plus. It's less intense and lacks complexity, comparatively speaking, too. Concurrently, prices continue rising. Sadly, because of this, I rarely ever sip on a Johnnie Walker Blue these days. The rise in popularity of single malts hasn't helped its case, too. Thanks for the comments, Dev. And if you have something you'd like to share with whiskey lovers around the world, download the free WhiskyCast community app from your app store and join the conversation. You can also find us on social media. Look for WhiskyCast on X, Blue Sky, Threads, Instagram, and Facebook. Our email address is comments@whiskycast.com. Let's close out the show now with Behind the Label, our look at the history, science, and people who make whiskey unique. We lost one of the good guys of whiskey last month. Joe Howell was the manager and whiskey guru at Federal Wine and Spirits in Boston for more than 20 years. Joe treated everyone the same, like family, whether you were shopping for a $20 whiskey or a $2,000 bottle. And when I interviewed him in June of 2010 for episode 271 of WhiskyCast, he explained why.
It's just about the customer and what their needs and wants are, whether, you have deep pockets and you're looking for a great bottle, or money's a little tighter and you're still looking for a great bottle. It's about making people enjoy and appreciate and get the scotch that works for them. I'm not on commission. It's about taking a little time to appreciate and enjoy. We work too hard, life's too short. And when you can take a few minutes and just enjoy a single malt, you should be enjoying, not just drinking something that you're drinking because you bought the bottle and you really don't like it. You'd rather pour it for company. And that's where 200 bottles open every day and more. I guarantee bottles. If I know a few things that you like, I want you to enjoy and take a little time for yourself. Used to be a 5-day work week, 8-hour work day. Weekends were for you. Now we don't have 15 minutes that we can take a little time and just think. So when you get a chance, enjoy, appreciate, especially with friends and a great single malt. You're not going wrong.
Joe's boss, Len Rothenberg, said in an email that as Joe was dying in hospice care, his brother snuck in one final dram, a sip of Balvenie 18-year-old. There will be a memorial service this coming Sunday at the Omni Parker House Hotel in Boston. It'll be packed with Joe's friends. We send our condolences out to Joe's surviving family, his brother Gordy and sister Debbie. Your brother was one of a kind, and he will be missed. That's all for this episode of WhiskyCast. You'll find links for the stories in this episode in our show notes at whiskycast.com. That's also where you'll find the latest whiskey news, my tasting notes, the calendar of events, and, of course, a complete archive of our past episodes going all the way back to 2005. We'd love to hear from you. Download the free WhiskyCast community app from your app store, or find us on X, Blue Sky, Threads, Facebook, and Instagram at WhiskyCast. Our email address, comments@whiskycast.com.
There's something special about opening a bottle of Dewar's 12-year with the people who matter most. It brings out the stories, the laughter, and the kind of moments you don't plan, but never forget. Build on tradition, made for right now, and best when shared. Dewar's 12-year-old.
WhiskyCast is a production of Cask Strength Media, copyright 2026, and comes to you each week from the charming, yet regrettably dry town of Haddonfield, New Jersey. I'm Mark Gillespie, reminding you that when you drink, please drink responsibly. Thanks for listening.